these first 3 years would be a major challenge. So we were wondering if it's possible that a single component could be applied for in a grant so that we could really focus on just that one piece for 3 years. No doubt we're going to have additional questions moving forward, but we also want to work collaboratively with you to talk about the lessons learned during the implementation in the months and years ahead. And finally, we would be remiss if we didn't ask you to consider sustainability. As we saw with the Thornton Commission, the complete funding was never actually realized, and the funding is going to be essential if we are to sustain these improvements. So whatever you can do to ensure that will happen in the future, we greatly appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Senators, good afternoon. My name's Renee Spence. I'm the Executive Director of PZAM, and we're here to support on behalf of all 24 superintendents, Senate Bill 1030. We appreciate Chair Kerwin, the commissioners, all the time and dedication they devoted to improving Maryland's schools. The one thing I want to say to you, since this is the beginning and the phase-in of Kerwin, to please call on your local education leaders when you have questions. And when you have work groups dealing with education, because the devil's going to be in the details, call on your local superintendents. They're your education leaders, and they're here to help you and would love the opportunity to do so. I'm one of the few people here, I can look around my 30-year state career. I had the privilege, the pleasure of watching Thornton develop and become a reality, and honestly watching the Kerwin Commission, the subcommittees, the work they've done. It's been an outstanding process. I would like to say one thing about superintendents and accountability, and I think this is very important. Superintendents are not afraid of accountability. They welcome accountability. They're held to the highest standards of compliance through state grants, local grants, federal grants, special education, Title I, etc. If you're going to develop a new accountability office, a new government office, new oversight, the only thing we ask is that you look at the audits that are currently taking place, legislative audits, MSDE audits, local government audits, and please have that office coordinate, possibly consolidate. You'll be adding performance evaluations. That's wonderful. I thank you. And that's it. How's that? 2 minutes?
Thank you so much. And let me just say that I don't think you missed one one Kerwin meeting. You were always there in the audience, and you have worked really hard. And I do have to say, and I don't know how many more times I'll get to see you in front of us before the session's over, but for all the many, many years that you have been with us, I hope you enjoy your retirement, but you will be missed in Annapolis.
Thank you.
Okay, no questions. Okay, thank you very much. Our next panel is, we have Shebra Evans, who's the president of the Montgomery County Board of Education, Julie Hummer, and John Willems from MABE.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me here. I want to say hello to our chairs, King and Pinsky, and to our vice chair and to all the senators on the joint committees. For the record, I am Shebra Evans, as stated, president on the Board of Education in Montgomery County, and I'm here to testify today on Senate Bill 1030 regarding the Kerwin Commission recommendations and the blueprint from Maryland. So on behalf of my colleagues, we are here to say we support this bill, and thank you so much for the significant funding. It will benefit not only Montgomery County, but everyone across the state. I always like to give a brief picture of Montgomery County. We have 162,000 students, and since 2010, we've added 20,000 students, and we're projected to add 11,000 more students over the next 6 years. And so we just hold firm to our mission to ensure that all of our students in Montgomery County are not only academically prepared, but they are prepared with the creative solving skills, and they're socially emotionally prepared to just do whatever it is that they choose to do after they leave our school system. And this legislation will improve access, learning, and opportunities for our students. So we just want to commend you on this bill. The concentration of poverty school grants established of community schools will improve the overall quality of life and educational outcomes of students. We encourage the General Assembly to consider increasing the number of schools and students that receive this support by serving schools with a lower threshold of concentrated poverty in future legislation and funding future budget decisions. The addition of wraparound services, a community school coordinator, and a healthcare practitioner will help to enhance student achievement experiences, improve student attendance, and improve the learning environment of schools throughout the state. We support early childhood education and believe providing children at a young age with full-day pre-kindergarten will provide the much-needed support that has proven to improve students' futures. We respectfully request that the General Assembly consider adding 3-year-olds in the future budget and legislation decisions to provide them the same equitable opportunities as the 4-year-olds. The Teacher Collaborative Grant Program will allow county boards of education, institutions of higher education, and teacher representatives.
But you're going to have to wrap it up.
I'm sorry?
You have to wrap it up.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Basically we want to say that we agree that in reference to the teachers, we believe that the backbone of our school system is our teachers, but we also hope that in future legislation that we include principals, paraeducators, and everyone else that supports our students. So just thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Julie Hummer. I'm Legislative Chair for the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. I'm a member of the Anne Arundel County Board of Education. I'm a former special education teacher and a parent of 5 public school students. The Maryland Association of Boards of Education, representing all of the state's local boards of education, strongly supports Senate Bill 1030 to launch the recommendations of the Kirwan Commission. We strongly support the bill's significant expansion of pre-kindergarten funding to support all 4-year-olds in full-day programs. My school system currently serves more than 2,500 pre-K students with no per-pupil funding. This expansion of funding is celebrated across all 24 LEAs. The legislation would also provide much-needed increases in funding for special education. We all know that we are significantly underfunded in this area due to deficits from the federal government. As a mother of children with special needs and a former special education teacher, I personally love this increase to better support our most vulnerable students. MABE is pleased that this legislation includes the new funding program recommended by the Commission to support schools with high concentrations of poverty. We support the Commission's recommendation to add a concentrated poverty weight to the funding formula to support intensive services for students and their families to enable them to succeed in school and that are coordinated and are able to meet the additional needs of students in schools located in distressed communities. We also support the bill's provision of significant funding to support supplemental instruction for struggling learners. And we also greatly support the bill's approach to rewarding local investments in teacher compensation with substantial state funding. In addition, the seed grants that would be provided to teacher collaboratives between school systems and teacher preparation programs are greatly appreciated. We appreciate the Commission's attention to the critically important issues surrounding student access to high-quality teachers in every school and classroom. Local boards recognize that a major component of the Kirwan Commission recommendation centered on increased accountability for local school systems. This bill would strengthen Maryland's accountability system by expanding the oversight role of the General Assembly.
Can I get you to wrap it up, please?
Okay. We support this, and we believe that the approach with shared commitments from everyone is the most productive way to go. On behalf of local boards of education, MABE is committed to strong advocacy for the funding and policy reforms contained in this. As a mother and former teacher and current school board member, and on behalf of MABE,
Thank you.
I applaud you for this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, we see you over there. I want to thank you all for your leadership and for the major accomplishment of this legislation on behalf of MABE. But really, all I want to point out at this time is the service and leadership of Joy Schaefer, a member of the Frederick County Board of Education and a member of the Kirwan Commission, who also served as a moderator and leader of one of the key work groups, the work group overseeing the recommendations regarding additional funding for our highest needs students, special education, limited English proficient, poverty, including the concentration of poverty, and much of that work remains unfinished as we look to the Commission to come back this fall and to finalize some of those long-term funding recommendations. But a lot of her work and the work of that committee is reflected in this bill as well, and we really appreciate that and her service. Thank you.
I don't see any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next panel is Cheryl Bost and Sean Johnson, MSEA.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman and Chairman Pinsky and members of the committee. My name is Cheryl Bose. I'm a 4th and 5th grade teacher from Baltimore County, serving as the president of the Maryland State Education Association, representing 74,000 educators across the state. Thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of Senate Bill 1030, a critical commitment to the blueprint for Maryland's future. The Kirwan Commission has worked hard for a couple years to develop a comprehensive plan to address the underfunding. Educators are extremely pleased to see this bill contain state funding to implement their blueprint over the next 2 years. $325 million for FY20 and $750 million for FY21. Of course, the members of the Kirwan Commission and educators can both tell you that this plan and this bill are about so much more than dollars and cents. They are about implementing the strategies that have worked in the best performing school systems and in some of our best schools right here in Maryland. So every student, regardless of their zip code, has access to the same opportunities. We need this additional funding in schools, not for more money's sake, but in order to implement these strategies, paying teachers a competitive salary so we can recruit and retain great educators in every classroom. Hiring more educators so teachers have time to plan and improve. And improve counselor and psychologists so we can provide services to manageable student caseloads. And expanding career technology education so every student can succeed in a career regardless of whether they choose to attend college. By investing in what truly improves student learning, this legislation will deliver education equity, treat our students with the respect and dignity they deserve, and position Maryland to win the jobs of the future in a rapidly changing world. That's why 5,000 educators from every county in the state will travel in buses from their schools to Annapolis on Monday night for the March for Our Schools. There is a real frustration on the ground about the current state of school funding. We could do so much better for our students if we were better supported. That energy will be front and center, and we hope you will all take some time Monday night to listen to those educators' voices. So I just want to thank you, the folks who put this bill together, for putting so much detail, and we are here to help make it move forward for our students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, members of the Joint Committee, good evening. I'm Sean Johnson with MSEA. Our written testimony on the back actually outlines just a couple of amendments that we would like you to consider as you are working on this very good bill. First, I just want to point a couple of them out. In the section that deals with the teacher salary grants, I think you want to be careful about how tight of a definition you use on the word teacher. What I mean by that is the current definition cuts out curriculum specialists, psychologists, and social workers. Those three positions in particular, I want to point to other sections of the bill and frankly the entirety of the Kirwan report to speak to their importance and significance to not be left behind when talking about teacher salary increases. On the case of curriculum specialists, those are positions that are on this Envision career ladder, We can't leave those folks behind as we envision what a higher pathway is. And as it relates to psychologists and social workers, when we have guidance counselors, school counselors in the bill to be a part of the teacher salary challenge improvement, but not psychologists and social workers, it's a problem in this ongoing effort to address community schools and bolster the support of that work. Second, in that same section related to the school salary challenge piece, Senator Eckert, you mentioned this. I think it's worth clarifying in this bill, in this section, that a district that might not make the challenge in fiscal year 20 can still qualify for the challenge in fiscal 21. You'll need to make a small amendment in order to make that possible. The only other piece that I want to speak to is around the teacher collaboratives. I think that is a really innovative part of this bill. I think it gives a lot of great opportunities as the state and districts step up to this challenge of what it means to create to create these career ladders and whatnot. But we need to allow those collaboratives to take place. Being in the exclusive bargaining rep, the union side of top-down mandates from the State Department of Education, we need to make sure that the department is not empowered to put limits on those collaboratives. We want
Sean,
guardrails.
I need you to wrap it up,
we want
please.
guardrails on MSDE's authority on some of those things, so that local development of those collaboratives can be challenged. I look forward to working with both committees on this bill. Thank you for bringing it forward so quickly, and we obviously urge a favorable report.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I don't see any. Thank you. The next panel is Allison Perkins Cohen. Okay. Linda Schenig and Tisha Edwards.
Good evening, Chairman Penske, Chair King, and members of the Budget and Taxation, Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committees. I'm Linda Chinya. I am currently the Vice Chair of the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners. Was a former educator in Baltimore for almost 40 years, and at one time the Chief Academic Officer for the school. So with all of that background, and especially from the board, we want to support Senate Bill 1030. We do have a few amendments that we have submitted, and they're articulated in our written testimony. First of all, I'd like to thank the Kerwin Commission for over 2 years of hard work, and these committees for continuously advocating for pre-K through 12 education. This legislation, as others have said, will shape the future delivery of education for many years to come within our state. As you're aware, Baltimore City Public Schools has a student population with enormous potential. As a board, we have set high expectations for our students. We expect all of our students to either graduate college itself and or be ready for careers. And this is why, for us, this legislation is so important. While we're still analyzing some portions of the legislation, we are encouraged that it has recognized the need for a concentration of poverty grant. There's an understanding that educating students in areas with concentrated poverty requires more resources, and with an endorsement of a concentration of poverty grant, the legislation affirms the unique challenges that the students in these schools face every day. From our review of the bill, it appears that the legislation is moving toward using Medicaid data as a proxy for poverty, and that the State Department of Education will work with the Maryland Department of Health to allow Medicaid eligibility data to be shared between the departments and the school boards. We would ask and caution that prior to a final decision on the use of Medicaid data, that the school boards be given an opportunity to review the results to ensure the accuracy as it relates to the student population and the impact that this change may have to funding.
Can I get you to wrap it up, please?
Yes, ma'am. I also want to ask that in the review of this, that you please consider facility challenges that might prevent implementing the legislation in a robust manner. Baltimore City has quite a large deferred maintenance amount, and to introduce some of the new resources and technology that would be inherent to a world-class education system within our old buildings must also be considered. Again, thank you for the opportunity to testify on Senate Bill 1030, and we look forward to working with the committees.
Thank you. Next.
I'll defer to you.
Okay.
Good afternoon, committee members, Chair Penske, Madam Vice Chair. My name is Tisha Edwards, and I represent Mayor Catherine Pugh, and I am here to lend support to our school system. I am going to defer my time to Allison Perkins Cohen, who I think will do a great job of expressing our support and concerns regarding Senate Bill 1030.
Great. Thank you to both committees for having us here, and thank you so much to the Kerwin Commission for all their work on this bill, and thank you for Mayor Pugh and Tisha for being here to support us, and for Vice Chair Chinia. So we're very pleased to be here to speak about this. This is we support this bill. This is obviously a great bill that we're very excited about. There's a lot of positive things in this bill. We have provided to the committee a copy of our Investing in Our Future, our world-class education system for Baltimore City students, which lays out, we met with Dr. Kerwin over a year ago, where he asked us to develop a plan of how we would use additional resources. And so we've done that in a very comprehensive plan that we've provided to you about what we think it takes to provide a world-class education to students for all categories of students, low-income students, English language learners, special ed students. So I encourage you to look at that. As Dr. Kerwin referred to, there are multiple studies about the funding system in Maryland that indicates that there's significant inequities. The 2018 study by Ed Trust indicates that nearly half of Maryland's Black and Latino students attend one of the 3 most underfunded districts in the state. And there's a July report from Hechinger Report that talks about Maryland as being one of the 6 states where the wealthiest 25% of school districts receive more money than the poorest. So because of that, we feel in this bridge to Kerwin is really important that the resources are particularly focused on the districts with the largest adequacy gaps. And we'd like to see the money prioritized that way. So, for example, one way to do that would be within the resources for a full-day pre-K. So there are districts like city schools who have provided full-day pre-K for a long time, and we get resources for the base amount of funding. However, almost all of our students who are in pre-K would qualify for the poverty weights, for the special ed weights, for the English language learner weight. And without those resources, we have to spend a lot, even though we get the full base amount. So we're receiving about $19 million for our pre-K, but we're spending about $37 million. So closing that gap would be helpful. Also, we applaud the strong connection between concentrations of poverty and student outcomes, which obviously has a strong correlation, so we appreciate that, and the list of wraparound services that are identified in the bill. Those wraparound services include many of the supports that that students need. There should also be academic supports should be identified.
Can I get you to wrap it up, please?
Yep, and I would just also emphasize that those wraparound services, many of those are centralized in nature, like the provision of ensuring safe transport for students to school, summer school, athletics, those kinds of things that really need to be provided centrally. So we would encourage you to think about making sure that the central offices have the ability to provide those services.
Good. Thank you very much. Dr. Edwin Green, Jr. and Shamoya Gardner. You're bringing the troops down here, I see.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, members of the Joint Committee. My name is Edwin Green, Jr., and I'm here with my colleagues from the Teachers Democracy Project. Our mission is to support Baltimore City Public teachers, and school communities in building sustainable and just neighborhood schools. We are here today because we support the increase in education funding represented in this bill, and we want to recommend that these funds be distributed equitably. We want to see these funds prioritized for the districts that have the greatest need. This means we want to see investment in places that have seen historic and systemic racist underfunding. Addressing systemic racism is about understanding that black communities have seen disinvestment in neighborhoods and housing, as well as job loss, over-incarceration, and lack of access to resources like healthy food and transportation. When communities struggle in this way, it follows that schools will also struggle. When you and your colleagues consider this bill, we would like you to think about Baltimore not as a black hole that mismanages funds, but as a place that has been historically failed by legislators and other organizations. Again, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony this evening.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Shamoya Gardner. I am the Education Policy Senior Associate at Advocates for Children and Youth. And for the first portion of my testimony, we'll be revealing some comments from the Maryland Education Coalition because their members are not able to be here today. So they just have two main concerns about SB 1030. First, that Chapter 361 of the Acts of 2018, Section 2, page 21, MEC is concerned that due to contract delays, the new reporting date, which is December 1st of 2019 for the independent study of IEP processes in the state, will not provide enough time to complete a quality study that will meet each of its goals and objectives. Second, that the Teacher Quality Incentive Grant Program on 23 is agreed by MEC as being necessary and supports the need for many school systems to increase the salary of their staff, but this program and the legislation lacks flexibility for those school systems whose higher priority may be to add additional staff to fill core subject area classroom needs such as the arts or student services positions, as mentioned earlier by representatives from MSEA. Again, ACY obviously supports this legislation, is extremely grateful for the work that has been put into it and the work that will continue to be put into passing this legislation. Would like to make mention of the fact that Senator Washington, I see you, has a bill that will clearly define community schools. We are very, very much open to the opportunity to combine that bill with the existing definition in this Kerwin legislation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks all of you for coming down. The next panel is Joe Francaviglia, Monique Ellison, and Malcolm Funn.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for all of your stamina so far. I think there's a little while to go, but Madam Chair, Chairman, Vice Chairs, thank you so much.
And thank you for your stamina of handing out papers every single day to us.
I was just going to say, I haven't seen you all for 6 hours, so I don't know what we're doing. Over there, look at that. Thank you so much, Senator. That's fantastic. We love that. And so Reverend Ellison was here. She had to leave to go do service tonight, so she'll be back next Wednesday for the House. But I do encourage you to read her testimony. The words are incredibly moving, and it could be any jurisdiction. It just happens to be her church that's in Anne Arundel County, but the words apply to every single jurisdiction. So thank you for your time. I'm here representing Strong Schools Maryland, which, again, hopefully you recognize based on the shirt. Also want to give a shout-out to Senator Zucker's office, who is the current champion of Jeopardy. So I encourage you to have your staffs take him on, because the next round is winner take all, so you can come for him. Senator Klossmeyer was the first winner, but good work over there. So we're here to stress three main topics, and we're in support of this legislation, but we want to urge and push the urgency behind the matter. We want to push that it has to be a whole systemic process, and avoid the temptation to break it up into smaller pieces or to pick off pet projects. Please, please, please keep it as a full system. Systems don't work when you pull off pieces. Puzzles aren't complete if it's missing pieces. It needs to be a whole system. And then the statewide approach. So Strong Schools Maryland represents over 2,000 individuals in over 20 counties. And looking around, I think we have at least one team in every jurisdiction that's represented on the panel here. And so it has to be a statewide solution. Kerwin's recommendations are statewide. They're good for every jurisdiction, and they matter. And so please resist the temptation to break it up. And please, please, please realize that we are a couple years behind, so we need to keep pushing, and it needs to get done now. And so I'm going to turn it over to the different team leaders. There's a panel following, but they're representing Calvert County, Anne Arundel County, Montgomery County, Kent County, and Baltimore County, and all have their own unique perspectives on why it will be beneficial for their counties. But just to note, they are all volunteers. None of them are paid. They all turned it around in 20 hours of notice to tell their personal story. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen to them and take their words and how it represents your own county as well. So the first one will be Malcolm.
Presiding officer and senators, shout out to my Senator Bailey there. My name is Malcolm Funn from Calvert County. You have my testimony, but I want to focus on a couple of things. Dr. Kerwin mentioned that 60% of the students are not career and college ready. Just think what happens to those 60%. If they're not ready for a career or college, they get put into the system, but not the educational or career system. They get put into the system, the judicial system, or they go into crime. So if you don't invest today in the schools, you'll be investing tomorrow in the judicial system and the correctional system. Also, you have to look at the blueprint, so you cannot neglect to invest in Maryland's future for the children there. That 60% is very important. One of the things about this legislation, there may be some issues that you don't like, or there's some items that you may not care for, but let me encourage you, tweak those things. When I was a child, I was taught you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So please, don't throw out the baby. This baby needs to be nurtured, trained, taught, and something else with the system. Why is it that truck drivers earn more money than school teachers who are in charge of nurturing and training future citizens? Something's wrong with that system. We can correct that here in Maryland. Again, I'd like to thank you. I'm a product of my father was a principal for 38 years in Calvert County, and I have a brother that's been teaching in Baltimore City for over 40 years. I'm not a school teacher, but I have a passion for the education of students. I work with students in the high school in Calvert County and in the church and other things, because the children are our future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we have the next panel is Nate Logan, Lisa Fuller, and Jody Bortz.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Joint Committee. My name is Nathaniel Logan, and I'm a team lead for Strong Schools Maryland out of Baltimore County. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our testimony.
Can you move that microphone just a little bit closer to you? Thank you.
Certainly. Yes, Baltimore County classrooms are overcrowded when you look at teacher-to-student ratios. We need to reduce classroom sizes to foster a safer and better learning environment for our students and our teachers who show up to work every day underpaid compared to other career fields with similar education and less responsibilities. The current bill and the blueprint for Maryland schools will provide much-needed resources to our schools to improve classroom instruction and increase the number of students and their support staff. Please, pay our teachers. They build the workforce. They build the future. The 1.5% is just the beginning. I'm a cyber professional. It has been predicted and forecasted that by the end of this year alone, more than 1.5 million cyber jobs will go unfilled. The state of Maryland has more than 12,000 IT companies across the public and private sectors. The question has to be asked, how will we address the problem? How will we prepare our students for the complex demands of the 21st century? The answer is through a quality education that begins early in the student's curriculum, especially in schools with poverty levels higher than 80%. These are the students that will fill those gaps, but they need the resources to match their desire to be great. My son wants to be an astronaut. He's a sixth grader in Baltimore County. I want to help him pursue his dreams. A favorable report with this bill not only does the right things for our students, our teachers, and our schools, but it could be the blueprint for our country. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Lisa Fuller from Montgomery County. I'm a team lead for a Strong Schools Maryland group in Montgomery County. I'm also retired from Montgomery County Public Schools. I became involved in Strong Schools Maryland as a team leader in the summer of 2017. I feel very strongly that this blueprint for Maryland's future in its entirety represents all that is necessary to give every student in the state of Maryland the opportunity to be successful citizens of the world. I believe all the recommendations should be funded because each element represents a different focus, and it is an integrated package. Given my time constraints, I will share my thoughts on Element 1, the early childhood education. If I had my way, all 3- and 4-year-olds would begin pre-K in the fall of 2019. Every year that passes results in more students beginning kindergarten so far behind that without significant interventions, they will never catch up. As an instructional specialist in MCPS and a grandmother volunteer, I have been in many kindergarten classrooms as recently as last week, but I will share one experience that I had last year, and it was pretty heartbreaking. This particular kindergarten classroom had 30 students. More than 50% were English language learners. There were 2 ESOL teachers assigned to the classroom 2 hours in the morning. The classroom teacher had 7 reading groups, which is outrageous. So on an average, the classroom teacher could work with each group for about 20 minutes of the 2-hour morning block, which left about 100 minutes for these kindergartners who weren't with their teacher to be on their own at a center, without the benefit of any teacher involvement. I had conversations with the teacher during her break and found that most parents are not native English speakers. They want their children to do well, and they keep up with the class is learning, but they can't offer assistance on classwork as it is English-based. And many of these parents kept their children home until kindergarten because they could not afford to send them to private pre-K. These recommendations for the early childhood element would help these parents, and they would be good for Montgomery County and good for families across the state. I understand that Maryland has bills to pay, but I cannot understand what bill is more important than getting this right for our children. It's similar to paying the mortgage. At my house, the mortgage payment always got paid first, and then we budgeted the rest. Our children are the future of our counties, our state, and our country. They hold the key to all that is possible, and we owe it to them to place them first and to put them in a place that they need to be successful. How can we not do that? I ask that you give sb1030 and hb1413 a favorable report.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Jody Bortz. I am a small business owner and a parent of 2 kids who are proud to attend Kent County Public Schools. I'm also a product of that school system. And I'm speaking to you today on behalf of families from the Eastern Shore, which we have some unique difficulties there, as you probably know. In Kent County alone, all of our schools have over 50% poverty in every school. And yet our teachers come in every day and they do amazing things with our kids on a shoestring budget. And I'm not sure how much longer they can keep doing it. This Kerwin funding is personal to me because my kid's childhood is halfway over. And what's going to happen to the both of them if we don't fix things now when we have the opportunity to do that? You know, our shirt's on the back. The time is now. It really is now. This is something that, you know, we know this needs to be done. So if we don't do this, then it's a choice to not take care of our future. And that, what else is there but the future to take care of? So I'm going to wrap it up and just say thank you on behalf of Kent County's parents, and that we urge a favorable report on SB 1030.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call a couple people up here together. David Hornbeck, Kim Humphrey, Denise Riley. How about Maria Marstow, maybe? Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is David Hornbeck. I have been involved in Maryland education for 43 years since I first came here in 1976 as Maryland's 5th state superintendent of schools. I have 2 sons who are school principals of successful schools. And I have 4 grandchildren that have attended public schools, and it is from that perspective that I speak. I'd just like to make 3 points. One is that in those 43 years that I've been observing and being involved in Maryland public education, we've only taken the opportunity to review comprehensively how we're doing 3 times. Once in 1979, a second time beginning in 1995, culminating in the Thornton work, and the third time now. In the first 2 times, we have failed in our quest to create the conditions within which we meet the needs of our children, particularly the low-income children of this state. This is a moment, once-in-a-generation opportunity for us to rise to this occasion. We've had 3.5 generations of children that have been provided a substandard education in the state during those 43 years. Second point, I'd like to underline what an incredible opportunity this is. I've had the opportunity over the last half century actually to work with 22 states on commission reports like this. This one is by far the best for a number of different reasons. One, there's none before that has linked those first 5 years of life to high school graduation in the manner that this does. Secondly, there is none that has taken place across the country in which the kind of formula focus as well as categorical programs on concentrated poverty has been offered up. It was one of the failings of Massachusetts that was referenced early on.
I hate to tell you this, but you're going to have to wrap it up.
There are a number of reasons why this presents a kind of an opportunity that we simply have not had. Final point, what this demonstrates is that we know how to get this job done. The only question that exists and has for these last 4 decades is whether we have the political will to do what we know works. This bill, 1030, provides the answer. I hope at the end of this session and that of the 2020 session that we will have risen to that occasion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, Chairs King and Pinsky and members of the Joint Committee. My name is Denise Riley. I'm Legislative Director for the American Federation of Teachers, Maryland. I'm speaking on behalf of the Baltimore Teachers Union, which represents over 6,000 educators in Baltimore City public schools. We strongly urge a favorable report on SB 1030. You have our written testimony, so I'll be brief. The Kerwin Commission has revealed Maryland public schools have been underfunded by billions of dollars. This has resulted in loss of programs, staff positions, and other important resources students need to be successful. We support this bill as a first step to build toward a world-class education system in Maryland through programs to overcome the challenges of concentrated poverty, the expansion of early childhood education, the increased funding for special education, and training for high-quality teachers. Education is one, if not the, most important issue our state confronts today. We know what our challenges are, and we have before us proposed solutions that have demonstrated the ability to overcome these challenges. The question before us is, can our state, by many measures, the wealthiest in America, summon the political courage to do right by Maryland's children and enact the policies and programs to make Maryland education system one of the best performing in the world? Again, we ask for a favorable report on SB 1030. Thank you.
Hello, chairs, members of the committee. My name is Kimberly Humphrey. I'm legislative counsel at the ACLU of Maryland. You have my full comments, so I will not read all of it. I echo the points that have just been made, and I, did intend to highlight wealth equity, adequacy, and how we pay special attention to how we fund and prepare marginalized communities. I do want to draw your attention to the idea of adequacy that's outlined in my testimony. This state, through the hallmark work of the Thornton Commission, decided on a threshold, and that is in court rulings, and we are not meeting that. The unfortunate reality is that despite the narrative that we have thrown money at schools. We have not thrown what is needed. All students are in need of help. I want to emphasize that all students, regardless of subgroup, are in need of help, with about 40% reaching career standards of the state. I also want to highlight that the adequacy gap that we see varies by community, and the $290 million per year adequacy gap for Baltimore City schools has a real impact and is depriving children of the core resources that they need. We've consistently made these points. We do support sb1030, and we urge that there is no further delay as we move forward with what is needed for students across the state. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Maria Maesto. I'm the Executive Director of the Committee for Montgomery. Committee for Montgomery is a coalition of business, labor, education, civic, and community organizations which advocates on issues that affect Montgomery County. We are a very diverse coalition, and we support this legislation. We are here tonight to try to ensure that the urgent needs of the growing vulnerable populations of Montgomery County and across the state are served through its passage, and this will require creative and responsible decisions that are made about the implementation of the recommendations, and that attention be paid to issues of equity for students and counties as funding questions are addressed going forward. In Montgomery County, we face unique challenges that require new approaches to funding formulas and programming at our schools. Our jurisdiction includes a much larger population of vulnerable students and than most people in the state realize. We've seen an increase in enrollment and a widening achievement gap along with it. And these circumstances deserve an approach that focuses on students and their needs rather than on outdated formulas and narratives. And we think this legislation is a very good first step in addressing this issue. We look forward to working with all of you on this issue. We are working in coalitions within the county and across the state. And we look forward to ensuring that the promise of the Kerwin Commission is realized for all students regardless of zip code. Again, we look forward to working with you, and we urge passage of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have Catherine Carter, Rachel Faulkner, LaWanda Jenkins, and Audrey Potter.
My name is Catherine Carter. I am a mom of 5, former teacher, and now vision advocate, who works on policy and legislative change to improve identification of vision disorders, both acuity and non-acuity, and access to vision care. Distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of SB 1030. Elected representatives, I appreciate you devoting thousands upon thousands of dollars per child to assure that each of them receives the education that he or she needs and deserves. Yet for too many children who cannot see the blackboard because they have not received vision exams and eyeglasses, which the total cost is only $141, these thousands of dollars in taxpayer funds that we already are devoting to their education are not achieving the results that we all desire. And tragically, for some of these children, their vision issues are unnecessarily leading them toward the even more expensive special education system. As a vision advocate who works on raising awareness of how vision and learning are connected, I commend the education bill for acknowledging this issue and adding vision care such as eye exams and glasses as an important part of the community schools' wraparound services. However, the student access gap to vision care isn't just in community schools, and not all schools are community schools or need to be. But every school has struggling students who are not getting eye exams, glasses they need. Thus, it is important to consider the 2019 Vision Bill that will address the vision needs in all schools. Thank you, lawmakers, for looking at the needs of all of our children. I ask you to continue to consider the needs of the 1 in 4 students whose learning is impacted by their vision disorder. As a teacher, mom, and vision advocate, I support Blueprint for Maryland's Future and ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Good evening, committee chairs, members of the two committees. Rachel Faulkner here with the Maryland Assembly on School-Based Healthcare in support of Senate Bill 1030. I want to first just really thank again, I know lots of people have the commission members for really understanding, listening, and valuing the role that school-based health centers play in schools across the state in providing healthcare services to students. While all school-based health centers provide primary care, very often there are not enough resources for them to provide behavioral health and oral health services. They're historically located in schools with high concentrations of poverty, and so we're very happy and excited to see that Kerwin has included recommendations and that there are state dollars to support providing health service dollars to schools to enhance or establish new health services in schools that reach an 80% poverty threshold. I just want to say that we really look forward to working with the Commission as we look at providing health services in schools, including to school-based health centers in future years by lowering the threshold to 55% as recommended by Kerwin, and then increasing dedicated funding through MSDE for school-based health centers that have been flat funded since the late 90s. In anticipation of this, we have introduced a bill being heard tomorrow in the House. Hopefully you will see it. It will come over to the Senate. That's our goal. House Bill 681, and it really will help build up an existing infrastructure to really support school-based health centers across the state in anticipation of new dollars, and also to provide for needs assessments. We really understand what currently exists and where gaps are, particularly when we talk about behavioral health and oral health services. Thank you.
Members of the Joint Committee, chairs, good evening. I'm LaWanda Jenkins with the Bellamy Gen Group. I'm here on behalf of our client, the Maryland School Psychologists Association, MSPA. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. MSPA is a professional association representing over 600 school-based psychologists throughout Maryland who are very, very committed to addressing the rising mental health needs of students throughout the state of Maryland and all school systems. I'm here with Audrey Potter, who represents the MSPA, and she is here to speak on behalf of both the Kerwin Commission as well as SB 1030. We are very supportive. We have amendments, and Ms. Potter will speak to the amendments.
Thank you, chairs and members of the committees. MSPA is thrilled to be here in support of such comprehensive legislation that shows the priority that we're placing for our children and their future. For all of the reasons that we've heard already tonight, this bill, we believe, is very important for the children that we serve every day in our schools. One thing that we did want to just note in Senate Bill 1030, as the bill is currently written, funds are allocated for school districts to hire mental health service coordinator positions. These positions were created last year with the Safe to Learn Act of 2018, and part of that legislation requires coordinators to maximize external funding for mental health and wraparound services. We hope that the committees will consider looking at that and prioritizing funding school-employed mental health providers. As school psychologists, school counselors, and school social workers, we are uniquely trained on the intersections between education and mental health. We are often the front line of mental health care for children, and we are uniquely trained to be able to support children's mental health needs while also helping them to pursue their academic goals and success. So we respectfully ask that you consider that, and we do urge the committee for a favorable report. We believe that this is crucial for our children. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we have Christopher Meyer, Chuck Connor, Lisa Fuller, Hernande Altima.
I can begin. Good evening. My name is Hernande Altima.
I'm here on behalf of Mental Health Association of Maryland. We are here in support of Senate Bill 1030. Given the quick turnaround, we were unable to provide written testimony, but I will aim to have a brief oral testimony. I would like to thank the Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education for including the Children's Behavioral Health Coalition's recommendations in their 2019 interim report, as well as the sponsor for including some of the proposals in the bill. The provisions specific to mental health and behavioral health are a good down payment for fiscal 20 and fiscal 21, but additional financial investment should be adopted beyond those years. I know this is a statistic that I have shared with many on the committee, but I want to underscore it again today, that 1 in 5 students have a mental health disorder that could impair their ability to learn. This estimates to approximately 233,905 school children and youth in the state of Maryland. Thus, integrating school-based behavioral health services in schools is critical for improving student outcomes. Under the Safe to Learn Act, which this legislature passed out last year, it required the School Safety Subcabinet to report on the availability of mental health services and practitioners for school-aged children and the mental health needs of school-aged children. They released a report on December 17, 2018, and found that in Maryland, not all of the districts are providing services to students with emotional and behavioral problems. This report also provides a pictorial representation of the gaps in services in each jurisdiction. I do implore the committees to take a look at the report. As the work of the Commission continues this interim, we look forward to working with them to further discuss the funding of the other recommendations, such as scaling of behavioral health services and training of school personnel to identify students that may need additional support, which is not part of this bill. However, this bill is a good beginning to helping the over 200,000 students that may have a mental health disorder. Thank you for your time and consideration, and we urge a favorable vote on Senate Bill 1030. I've had 3 other hearings.
Thank you.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Christopher Meyer. I am a research analyst at the Maryland Center on Economic Policy. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that seeks to foster broadly shared prosperity in Maryland. We support Senate Bill 1030 because world-class schools are essential to our state's economic health. Maryland's best schools demonstrate what is possible when we guarantee all children the support they need to learn and thrive. Yet policy choices made over the last decade have eroded Maryland's support for education, hurting children in every part of our state. And children who face obstacles in and outside the classroom often bear the greatest costs. Only a quarter of Maryland school districts were at or near the Thornton adequacy standard as of 2015, down from nearly all as of 2008. More than half of black students attended a district that was underfunded by 15% or more. Little has changed since then. The Kirwan Commission has developed an evidence-based plan to put Maryland schools back on track. Smart reforms like bringing teacher pay up to the level of other professionals and providing robust support to students who face barriers such as toxic stress will bring enormous benefits. To succeed, these reforms will require strengthened investment in schools. We can afford to make this vision a reality if we improve Maryland's revenue system by removing special interest tax breaks, updating outdated policies, and fixing our upside-down tax code. Maryland faces a choice. We can continue down the current path, leaving more children behind and allowing the cracks in our economic foundation to widen. Or we can be bold and build world-class schools in Maryland. Senate Bill 1030 is a strong step in the right direction. For these reasons, I respectfully ask for a favorable report.
Good evening, chairs, members of this joint committee. My name is Charles Connor. I'm here this evening on behalf of Baltimore County. The county supports Senate Bill 1030. This bill represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Maryland to do something great for our students, but also for our entire state. The county executive recognizes how overcrowding, poverty, short staffing, insufficient funding have impacted students and educators. The county executive also believes that families deserve the opportunity to achieve economic stability and security and believes that this bill is a vehicle to achieve these goals. Our county faces significant challenges. We need more pre-K and childhood opportunities. We have too many students that have inadequate access to nutrition and school-based meals. In 107 of our 165 schools, more than 40% of the students live in poverty. 107 of 165 schools. SB 1030 will help us build the robust and dynamic public school education that our parents and students deserve. It would also help us help some of our most vulnerable populations. Moreover, we're extremely proud that this bill will also provide teacher salary incentives that will help us retain and attract some of the best teachers to Baltimore County. For these reasons, Baltimore County asks for a favorable report on SB 1030. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, folks, we have two people left. We saved the best till last, right? Laura Stewart and Nathaniel Logan. More?
Nate Logan already testified.
Oh, we did? Okay. Thank you.
Playing cleanup today. Good evening. My name is Laura Stewart, and I'm representing MCC PTA, which is the Montgomery County Council of PTAs, representing over 40,000 members. We strongly support the blueprint for Maryland's future health education, for the blueprint for Maryland's future. All children should be able to attend an effective pre-K program. Each dollar invested has a $4 to $9 return, according to National Forum of Early Childhood Policy and Programs. We also realize that children need mental health services, trauma-informed approaches, and recovery school opportunities. Without properly trained teachers, children won't learn. Teachers can be supported by increasing professional development, focusing on best practices, reducing or eliminating cultural bias. There's a problem in Montgomery County that we have a problem of getting enough teachers of color to teach our students. So any program to recruit and train those teachers would be greatly appreciated. Also, we need our teachers to be put in schools that have the most need if they're highly effective. What happens is a lot of our highly effective teachers end up going to schools that don't have as much need for the students. Also, we are concerned about the funding formulas that will be coming up in the future. We must increase funding for students at risk no matter their zip code. We agree that the concentration of poverty, schools need more help, but if you get down to 75% of poverty, for instance, those kids still need help. So we need to make sure that we help those kids too, not just 80 and above. We support SB 1030 in order to bring our state back to a leadership position in providing a world-class education for all our kids. Jack Smith, our superintendent, likes to say all means all. I have a senior who has received that world-class education, but I had to fight for it. I appealed to decision makers, and I made sure he reached his potential. We need to do that for all of our kids in our state.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, that's the end of the hearing.